So hello everybody. This is I'm Frederick. I have Ivanna as our guest today. We are in a group. Actually, we started this group. Group was started by Arik, who is in Israel, and he's doing weekly fasting, which is done every Friday and Saturday, 24 hours. Then from that group, we developed another group that is now called Dry Fast, a little prolonged dry fast. And we manage this group together with Arik, and we have met so many people here. We have been bringing sometimes experts, and today we have Ivanna, who is very, very special to us because in the issues of nutrition, she's doing so well. She's done research, and she's also a coach on this area, and she also has an experience, life herself. Is a story of what has happened with her life with nutrition, with what we eat or what we feed on. So we are going to listen to her story tonight, and then thereafter, those who have questions, you're going to ask those questions at the end of it all. And if you feel like you have to bring a new idea, it's welcome. But let us give her time before. We don't want to interrupt her flow, so let us give her time. And Ivana, please, I don't know if you're going to share some things on the screen. You can test if it's working, so that if it's not working now, I start to work on my settings, please. Okay.
I do want to share screen. Let me see.
Yeah.
Can you see
it's working? It's working.
You see the picture? Herbivore.
Very clear.
All right, so let me get out of this mode. Pause share. All right. Are you still seeing the picture?
Yeah, they're still there. You're still sharing your screen.
Okay.
I don't know if you can
get out of here. Are we out of the picture?
Yes. So now we are back into the Zoom. Yeah.
Actually, but I just closed.
We can see you very well. Can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, this is not my forte. I always struggle with this, so I apologize. Well, let's hope that today you're going to get to see everything I want you to see. All right, guys. So today I want to address some of the myths about diet and nutrition, and the most common misconceptions about protein, sugar, and the so-called deficiencies. This webinar came together somewhat spontaneously as a result of the discussion that took place in the dry fasting group a few days ago about what is the healthiest diet for humans. It was actually more of an argument, if you will, where vegans were clashing with carnivores. Now, of course, people tend to get really attached to their beliefs, and when challenged, they feel personally attacked or threatened. So what I want to stress is that today's discussion is not to denigrate or diminish anyone's dietary choices. It's to look at the science behind nutrition with regard to chemistry, physics, and biology without getting our feelings involved. What I'm going to talk about today doesn't come from a place of judgment. It's important that you know that, because if it did, then by default, it would also be self-judgment, because I myself have only been fruitarian for the last 4 years. And most of my life, I was a meat and potatoes type of gal. So, acting holier than thou would be hypocritical of me, to say the least. Now, what I'll have you know is that I have cycled through a number of diets, from paleo keto, cooked vegan, raw vegan, then vegan keto, before going fruitarian, in an attempt to fix a number of health issues that had me living in a state of despair for nearly a decade. The only thing I hadn't done was the fully carnivorous diet. You know, initially, in the beginning of my struggles, I turned to the medical establishment, but of course, they were no help because, for the most part, the AMA believes that there's really no significant provable link between diet and disease. So their solution was to pump me full of chemicals. Of course, that did not appeal to me. And for a number of years, I chose to work with a so-called naturopath who put me on a bunch of supplements and insisted that I eat 21 eggs and nearly 9 pounds of meat per week. Because, as he put it, I needed structural proteins. But of course, that diet only made me sicker. I got more constipated, more depressed, my skin got worse, my hair was falling out more. And as I desperately kept searching for solutions, I came across fruitarianism. But at that time, I thought that people who only ate fruit were nuts, because I was so brainwashed by those that are normally regarded as the authority on health. But unfortunately, doctors know diddly squat about proper nutrition. And the reason for this is that they simply aren't taught about it in medical school. Only 29% of medical schools in the US require 25 hours of training in nutrition, which means that the other 71% don't have any mandatory nutrition requirements, which is kind of shocking. But even if a doctor does put in 25 hours, let's say, if you consider that in the States it takes anywhere between 8 to 12 years to become a doctor, that 25 hours is a drop in the bucket. And it shows that diet and nutrition are given virtually no importance in healing and disease prevention. And it wasn't until I came across Dr. Morse and started studying and learning how the body works that I finally got it. When I first heard him talk about humans being primates and how optimal diet is species specific, it suddenly clicked and it all started to make sense. It also made me mad because it hadn't occurred to me until then, considering how blatantly obvious that is. Now, there are many conflicting opinions out there about which category humans fall into, with some people thinking that we're carnivores and others believing that we're omnivores, and then still some others who are convinced that we are herbivores. But if we look at the characteristics that distinguish each of these classifications, then it's quite clear that we are neither of those. I mean, think about it. What animal do we most closely resemble? Do we look like horses? No. Do we look like snakes or turtles? Not last I looked in the mirror. Gorillas and chimpanzees are our closest relatives in the animal kingdom. In fact, human and monkey DNA is 98% identical, which makes us primates. And what do primates eat in nature? Unless their habitat has been significantly altered, depleting their food resources, we will find that primates will predominantly eat fruit. And even when they have to compromise and eat roots and leaves, no one has ever seen a gorilla hunt down a zebra and then grill it over a fire for some nice steak. And while it is true that they do eat insects, that's not proof that we should also be eating bugs. You know, we may be primates, but we're also much more sophisticated and refined biologically than our wild cousins, which means that our diet should be as well. Now, human brain only uses sugar for energy. So this idea that we are meat eaters or omnivores does not resonate. So now I'm going to show you the graphic. And so that you can see this. All right. So you see, yeah? So a lot of people say that, oh, we are carnivores because look at our canines. Well, gee, look at these teeth. Do they look like carnivore teeth? Look at the carnivore teeth. These very sharp, long canines. And then you compare them to herbivores and primates and then humans. So what kind of teeth do we have? Do we have teeth that support tearing into raw meat? No, we don't. If you look here, you will also see that each class of animals has a different digestive system structure. For example, carnivores, those are our cats, have the intestine that is only 1.5 to 3 times their body length. So they have a really short bowel transit time from the moment food goes in, it comes out the other end. Omnivores, and this is basically meat eaters that also eat plants, have the intestine that's 3 times their body length. And when we talk about body length, we really only talk about the spine, because unlike humans, animals are not standing upright, so we're not measuring their limbs the way we do with humans. And then we move on to herbivores. Now, their intestine is 20 times the length of their spinal cord. So look at the difference, 3 times long to 20 times as long as their spine. Now, herbivores are obviously animals like cows, horses, elephants. These are animals that are ruminants, that they really chew their food. And the reason they need such a long intestine is that fiber is actually very difficult to break down and digest. And human and primate intestine relative to the herbivore intestine is 9 times its body length. So what this tells us is that we're neither meant to eat meat, nor are we meant to be grass eaters. We're not herbivorous. we don't have a stomach that has 3 chambers in it. Because what do herbivores do? And those people who grew up on the farm like I did know that when you watch cows, when they chew their grasses, they chew, they swallow, then they regurgitate after that grass had been digested some by their digestive juices, and then they chew it some more. And then it takes anywhere between 24 to 48 hours for that food to pass through their digestive tract, as opposed to 2 to 4 hours for carnivores. Now, human bowel transit time is anywhere between 12 to 18 hours, but that's only if we eat the diet that we're supposed to eat. Now, another difference in the GI tract structure is that both carnivores and omnivores have intestinal wall for minimum absorption. If you ever seen pictures of human intestine, you will see that they're ringed, right? They're called sacculated structure. And that structure allows for maximum absorption. Another huge difference between primates and other species is that carnivores and omnivores secrete uricase. And uricase is an enzyme or a chemical that oxidizes uric acid. And uric acid is produced as a result of digesting meats or seafood. Any food that contains compounds called purines are going to initiate the production of uric acid in the body in order to break it down. So when humans eat a lot of meat, a lot of animal products, and even things like soy are really high in purines, we're going to produce a lot of uric acid. And uric acid is destructive to the kidneys. And it is implicated in kidney stone formation. Uric acid deposits will also cause gouty arthritis. And uric acid is extremely painful when it is deposited as crystals in our joints. This is something I have personal experience with. The pain is absolutely excruciating. So unlike other types of animals, primates and herbivores do not secrete uricase. We don't have the enzymes necessary to actually buffer the blow of the metabolic waste associated with protein digestion. So I hope that this gives you a visual representation of how different gastrointestinal tracts affect the type of food that is best suited for each specific type of animal. And I'm sure you know this. We don't feed fish what we feed a horse. And we don't feed cats what we even feed dogs, because cats are carnivores. I have cats, and cats cannot eat vegetable matter. Cats cannot eat fruits. They do not do well on plant matter. So it's important that the diet that we choose is in line with the type of animal we are. And we are primates. All right. So I'm gonna get out of that picture. And can you see me now?
Yes.
All right, so I'm back on your screen, great. All right, so another thing you got to look at is the energy levels of different species. For example, take a horse that is a herbivore. Everybody knows that horses are workers, and horses also race in competitions. So lots of energy they get from plants. Whereas if you look at cats, and I'm a bona fide cat lady who has 2 cats, I can tell you that they sleep 18 to 20 hours a day. So if protein and meat is so good for us, then why are they asleep most of the day? Well, because protein digestion takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot out of the animal. So they get, very short bursts of energy and then they're done. So, if you see a cow and don't feel a sudden overwhelming urge to tear into it with your sharp claws and teeth, then I would say that it's highly unlikely that you are a carnivore. And actually, we don't actually have claws, right? So I think that this comparison makes a compelling case that humans are actually natural frugivores or fruit eaters. Now, another diet myth is that cooking our food makes us superior to the rest of the living creatures and is seen as the testament to our advanced evolution. Except there is no logic, rhyme, or reason to this, because no other animal on the face of the planet cooks their food. We are the only ones. And if you look at nature and how God, source, universe, intelligence, intelligent force, or whatever you want to call it, how that consciousness designed this planet, then it's easy to see that within their respective environments or ecosystems, every single creature is provided with their food in the exact state that it needs to be to fully sustain them. Meaning everything is ready-made and does not require extensive preparation or processing. Humans adopted cooking of their food entirely out of survival necessity. As a result of migrating into cold climates where our natural food sources were not available all year round. But in reality, we are a tropical species. I'm sure you heard the saying, it all began in Africa. And it's true that the higher primates or hominids did originate on the African continent, where the weather was warm and fruit was abundant all year round. You could tell that we're not designed to live in the cold because, unlike bears and foxes, we're not covered in thick fur, and we need clothes to protect us from the elements. So I would argue that the start of genetic mutations could be traced back to the time when we began cooking our food, precipitating the collective decline in human health. And while it may have helped us survive in extreme northern climates, surviving isn't exactly thriving. I mean, look at all the cancers and neurodegenerative conditions that plague us and seem to be getting progressively worse with generations. chemically, it is a known fact that heating food either destroys or alters the nutrients in such a way that renders them completely unusable. During boiling, minerals are leaked into the water. Their bonds are broken and are then rebonded into cations. All the water solubles, those are your bioflavonoids and the B complex, are completely obliterated. Heat also causes denaturation of proteins by disrupting hydrogen bonds. And this applies to grains and legumes as well. The reason for this is that heat increases kinetic energy, causing the molecules to vibrate so rapidly and violently that those bonds are disrupted. Proteins in eggs both degrade and coagulate, making them absolutely useless. Not only that, they are extremely constipating and mucus forming. Now, denaturing grains and legumes through extensive cooking is actually necessary because it's the only way that they can be digested at all. I mean, I don't think anyone here is interested in eating raw rice or beans. So we have to excessively process them by boiling for quite a long time just to be able to eat them without injuring our trachea. But heat does more than just destroy enzymes and nutrients. Cooking actually results in formation of new harmful substances. For example, cholesterol is changed into oxycholesterol that's implicated in vascular disease. Dietary fats change into trans fatty acids, which are then stored in our adipose tissue and contribute to cancer and vascular diseases. Proteins and sugars bond together to form heterocyclic amines that are linked to cancer, ADHD, and a number of other brain diseases. Frying, roasting, baking, pasteurization, and canning create a substance called acrylamide as a result of a chemical reaction between sugars and the amino acid asparagine. And acrylamide is found in products like potatoes, grains, coffee, and fried or roasted animal flesh. So, considering that, I would reconsider even going for a baked potato or a baked sweet potato. And that cup of coffee isn't harmless either. Now, steaming or boiling does not produce acrylamide. So if you must have cooked food, that would be the best method of preparation, although you're still going to lose the nutrients. Now, another aspect of this issue is that our digestive enzymes that are needed to break down proteins are highly specialized, selectively targeting only a few amino acids that they can act upon, kind of like the lock and key. For example, pepsin separates tyrosine and phenylalanine exclusively, while trypsin is only responsible for separating arginine and lysine. And the problem with such strict specialization is that these enzymes can only do their job when the protein chains from which they're supposed to extract their assigned amino acids perfectly match the enzyme's job description. And if the structure of the peptide, meaning protein, has been altered as a result of cooking, then its specific enzyme no longer recognizes it. This means that these complex protein chains remain intact, which makes them completely unusable. So you see how cooking your proteins ensures that they will not be digested or utilized. So this idea that cooked food is going to rebuild your body is completely false and ridiculous. I cannot tell you how many arguments I have had with clients who were trying to convince me that eating cooked food was going to help them rebuild. They'd say things to me like, oh, this raw detox depleted me so much that I want to go on some cooked food for a little while to rebuild. And I just want to pull my hair out, because I would explain all of this to them and they go, yeah, I understand. And then they come back around to, oh, but I need cooked food because I need to rebuild. But because heat denatures, destroys, and alters the chemical structure of nutrients, cooked food is effectively dead food that doesn't have the capacity to rebuild anything. Period. End of story. Any weight that you might gain from eating cooked food is nothing more than edema that's created as a result of inflammation, because cooked food, regardless of whether it's animal or plant-based, is acidic. Food is fuel, and when we burn fuel, it leaves metabolic byproducts that we refer to as ash. Now, most raw foods leave alkaline ash, while most cooked foods leave acid ash. And acidosis causes an inflammatory response where the body produces mucus to protect the tissues. And inflammation also pulls water into the tissues in an effort to dilute the acidic waste, and in that way reduce its corrosive effects. Another thing that the body does is it will push toxic materials into the adipose in order to keep it away from the vital organs, where together with excess water, it makes our fat tissue expand. So if you're following the ketogenic diet that includes a great deal of animal fat, know that you're consuming the most toxic part of an animal. I remember when my naturopath put me on his crazy paleo protocol that included 9 pounds of meat, he warned me that I would lose a lot of weight. He said that it was water and swelling that was giving my body a shape, not actual muscle. And that once I stopped eating dairy and grains, the inflammation would subside, releasing all that excess water, and I would shrink, which is exactly what ended up happening. And it only took about a couple of weeks for me to pee all of my muscles out. And mind you, I was still eating loads of meat and eggs at that time. But he also said something else that stuck with me, even though I didn't understand the implications of it at the time. He said that once I got too thin, he would want me to reintroduce a very limited amount of buckwheat and spelt into my diet to plump me up. And it was years before I realized why he was saying that. You see, since he didn't know how to fix the malabsorption problem responsible for my abnormally low body mass, what he decided to do was create a manageably mild level of inflammation that would cause my body to retain just enough water to give it the illusion of fullness and weight. In other words, you wanted the inflammation to be just enough so as to not make me look emaciated, but not so high that it would make me look red, puffy, and swollen. So please understand that when you eat cooked food, any weight you might put on is nothing more than water retention. What you want instead is to build lean, dense muscle. And to do that, your digestion, absorption, and utilization have to be working properly. You'll know that you're malabsorbed if you get really skinny on the raw diet. And if you think that you have muscles, just go on a dry fast for 2 to 3 days and see how much of that muscle mass you lose. If it's significant, then your muscles weren't muscles at all. It was just water. And when you went on a dry fast, your body simply released it all. Also, unlike water fasting, dry fasting preserves muscle by targeting fat primarily. So on a short dry fast of 3 days, you should not be losing muscle. Now, since raw plant foods or raw plants contain the highest levels of bioavailable enzymes and nutrients, if you cannot maintain muscle while eating raw, it's not the food that's the problem, it's your body. When people get too thin on the raw diet, it's not because of any so-called deficiencies or lack of calories. It's because they're malabsorbed. In order for the body to be able to benefit from ingested nutrition, 3 things have to happen. You must be secreting enough stomach acid, bile, and enzyme to break down the food. And if your stomach is hypoactive or you have poor pancreatic or liver and gallbladder function, then your digestion and absorption is done right there. You proceed no further. The next step is that nutrition needs to be absorbed through the gut wall. And if the wall of your small intestine is backed up with stagnant lymph, then you're not going to be able to absorb any nutrients through it. Now, if you have a semi-decent absorption, let's say, you still need hormones to utilize these nutrients. And utilization hinges on whether or not you have decent glandular function. For example, without calcitonin and parathormone that are produced by the thyroid and the parathyroid, respectively, you cannot utilize calcium. And without proper adrenal function, you can't really utilize all the rest of the nutrients. Now, many people find it quite difficult to sustain the raw lifestyle long-term because our bodies are too broken down. When I first went raw, and I tried this several times before I finally became fruitarian, I got so weak that I thought I was going to die. I could barely walk, and I had problems breathing. Every few steps I took, I'd have to stop and hold on to something for support and catch my breath because I was wheezing. And at the time, I thought that I was weak because of the lack of nutrition and calories. When in reality, the reason for this was that my adrenal glands were as dead as a doorknob. Of course, at the time, I knew absolutely nothing about adrenals or glandular function in general. The common misconception is that we need protein for energy, but this is not true at all. It's important to understand that when we eat animal flesh, it's not the protein that gives us energy. It's the animal neurotransmitters that are stored in the muscles and tissues, like epinephrine and cortisol, that give us a boost. And this means that meat essentially is a stimulant. And all cooked food, including vegan fare, is stimulating because, one, it's prepared with salt, which is a known adrenal stimulant that raises blood pressure. And two is that it's acid ash forming. And acids are stimulants as well because they irritate and inflame. In fact, the acute stage of lymphatic stagnation is defined by hyperactivity, where nutrients are being used at an accelerated rate because the body is mobilizing its defenses and putting up a fight against this aggravation that comes from acidic lymph. Now, our adrenals are supposed to produce all of those neurotransmitters, but when our glands are down, then we have to resort to supplying these chemicals from external sources, just so that we can function. The other aspect to this is that, unfortunately, when we do supply the hormones and neurotransmitters through food by eating meat, the glands that are responsible for producing those neurotransmitters and hormones stop making them because the body has to maintain chemical balance. So as you see, this is a two-pronged issue. So in people with hypoactive glands that don't produce adequate hormones and neurotransmitters, go raw and eliminate all external stimulants from their diet by giving up meat and cooked foods, they're faced with the effects of their depleted adrenals and sluggish thyroid. Another problem is that the body cannot actually use protein. Yes, you heard it right. The body cannot use protein. Proteins are peptides and polypeptides, which means these are amino acids that are strung together into longer chains. Now, think about how nutrients get into our tissues. How do we absorb nutrition? Well, of course, they're transported in the blood. But did you know that peptides, and certainly not polypeptides, can be transported in the blood because those molecules are simply too large? Blood can only carry amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. So in practical terms, our blood cannot transport anything larger than 3 amino acids strung together. But to put it into perspective, understand that a protein chain is made up of as many as thousands of amino acids. And only chains that are 3 aminos long can be shuttled through the vascular system. So when you consume protein, in order for it to be taken up by the blood to build tissues, it has to be broken down into amino acids through a rather grueling and aggressive process. And as we already discussed, it requires specialized enzymes that will not separate these aminos from peptides after the cooking has altered their structure. So the question is then, why would we do this and make our body work so hard to extract amino acids from peptides and polypeptides that are already present in abundance in plants? And these amino acids are ready-made and available for utilization without the need for all this extra work. If I told you that it's more beneficial for you to work for an entire week to earn $100, even though you could make it in one day, would you think that I was making sense? Of course not. But that's essentially what your doctor tells you when she says that you need complex proteins from meat, eggs, and dairy. Think just how stupid it is to ingest complex proteins because you believe that it's their complex structure itself that makes them beneficial, and then have your body take a very long time to break them apart into amino acids for them to even be usable. So when I hear carnivores say that the reason their bowel movements are so minimal is that the body absorbs meat so completely that there's hardly any waste byproduct left, I want to laugh. Do they think that there's steak floating around in their blood? I mean, our entire blood volume is 5 pints. And if you eat 6 to 8 ounces of steak or some other animal protein 3 times per day, do you think that it somehow gets neatly packed into the vascular system? Not only that, but because protein digestion is such an intensely lugubrious process, it considerably slows our bowel transit from 12 hours to 24. And that's if you're not constipated. Now think about what this actually means. Human body temperature is 97 degrees Fahrenheit or 36.6 Celsius. Now think about this in terms of the weather. 97 degrees is pretty hot. Have you seen roadkill that's been lying on the side of the road for 24 hours in a 97-degree heat? That rotting, decomposing flesh doesn't look or smell very appetizing. And it's not that much different when animal meat putrefies in the very warm intestine for that length of time. And that's why all meat eaters, without exception, have nasty parasites. And thank God for the parasites, because they're the ones digesting that crap. Without their help, we would die of poisoning or toxemia. There is a character, well, he's a YouTuber who calls himself vegetable police, who has been documenting his many ill-fated attempts at getting healthy through various diets. While I wouldn't take his health advice, he does provide good comic relief. So he talked about going on the carnivorous diet. And initially in his videos, he was saying that his digestion and utilization of meat was so complete that his bowel movements were really small. Now, fast forward several months, where the carnivorous diet finally caught up with him, making him really ill. So as a former vegan, he went on a 9-day juice fast to reset his system. And when he reintroduced plant enzymes into his system through juices, after eating nothing but meat for months, he started pooping nonstop. He said that he was having 6 to 7 very large and smelly bowel movements daily. It felt like a job. So as it turns out, all that meat didn't get magically absorbed into his body, but instead it had been accumulating in his colon. But because he had almost no enzymatic activity and no fiber to stimulate peristalsis, it wasn't getting eliminated. He actually said that he broke his fast after 9 days because he got tired of pooping so much. Another thing to consider is that the body cannot store excess protein. So if you take protein supplements, thinking that it will provide your body with extra nutrition, you're putting unnecessary burden on your digestive and eliminative system and wasting your money, basically. Because the body has very minimal need for amino acids. And when you consume more than can be utilized at any given time, all you're doing is producing manure. Another problem with protein is that its metabolism creates very toxic waste byproducts like creatinine, ammonia, and uric acid, which are extremely corrosive to the kidneys, liver, and the brain. High protein diets is the reason we lose filtration and go into kidney failure. When we look at blood work, we look at creatinine levels along with urea nitrogen to determine the state of our kidneys and their level of filtration. And when we lose filtration while still continuing to eat acid ash foods like meat, we become unable to excrete ammonia, causing it to accumulate. Now, if you ever lived with cats, then you know that their urine has a very strong ammonia smell because cats, as carnivores, eat lots of meat. That's all they eat, in fact. Now, ammonia can poison your brain and shut down the nervous system. And this is especially dangerous when our liver function is inadequate or poor. I remember there was a story a couple of years ago about an Australian Instagram bodybuilder / fitness model who died because of excessive protein consumption. What she actually died of was encephalitis caused by ammonia accumulating in the brain as a result of excessive protein supplementation. Young, beautiful 30-year-old girl. And this just comes to show that you can be quite unwell on the inside and still look good on the outside. So don't use looks as a barometer of health and wellness. Because a lot of people who have recently transitioned to the raw diet or fruitarian diet may actually look worse for wear, at least for some time. Now, a side note on creatinine. Creatinine is very toxic to the body, and specifically the kidneys. If your creatinine level is about 0.5, you're starting to lose your kidney function. At 0.7, your filtration is pretty much gone. So that's protein. Then there is the sugar myth. Ostensibly, fruits are bad because they contain too much sugar. And this is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. It's even dumber than the protein myth. There are 3 simple sugars known as monosaccharides: fructose, glucose, and galactose. Fructose and glucose are found in fruits and vegetables, and galactose is a milk sugar. So if you're eating dairy, you're eating sugar. If you're eating vegetables, you're eating sugar. You're not abstaining in any way from sugar by avoiding fruit. Fruits and vegetables contain both fructose and glucose, but the ratios are a bit different, where fruits have more fructose and veggies have more glucose. It could be argued, however, that fructose is actually a superior sugar because, unlike glucose, it doesn't require insulin to enter the cell. So it is easier to absorb and utilize, which means that it delivers energy to the cells faster and more efficiently. And then you have complex sugars like di and polysaccharides. When you combine glucose and fructose, you get sucrose, which is a disaccharide. And that's the formula used to artificially create table sugar. And finally, there are the polysaccharides, otherwise known as starches. So if you're avoiding fruit, but eating beans, lentils, rice, quinoa, potatoes, corn, or bread, you're actually consuming hundreds of times more sugar than if you were eating fruit. And this sugar is much more concentrated and difficult to break down. The reason bread or rice don't taste sweet is that the sugar is too complex and we can only taste simple mono sugars. In order to be able to taste the sweetness of rice or potato, you have to break those polysaccharides down into monosaccharides. But that process is so long that by the time that it does occur, the sugar is too far down our GI tract to be able to taste it because we only have taste buds in our mouth. And the sugar that results from the breakdown of starches, which make up as much as 21% of grains and cereals, like rice, corn, barley, and so on. That sugar is called maltose, which is a disaccharide that consists of 2 molecules of glucose. And even though maltose does not taste as sweet as fructose, its glycemic index is 105, whereas the glycemic index of fructose is 23. And if you're diabetic or have adrenal or pancreatic issues, this could be downright dangerous. So if you consider the glycemic index, diabetics would actually do very well on the fruitarian diet. So this fear of fruit is not only irrational, but frankly stupid. And this is why I get so frustrated and mad at doctors who, after 12 years of schooling and studying chemistry and biology, can't seem to differentiate protein from amino acids and simple fruit and vegetable sugars from dye and polysaccharides and starches. Now, beans have the type of sugars that are called oligosaccharides, and these are indigestible, which causes them to sit in our GI tract for long periods of time and ferment, resulting in gas, bloating, and therefore candida. So if you were to ask me, I think that the healthiest diet for humans would consist mostly of raw fruits and vegetables, with the greater emphasis being on fruits. Fruits are much more astringent than vegetables, partly due to higher fructose levels, because fructose is a highly reactive sugar. In fact, it is 5 to 40 times more reactive than glucose, depending on the stability or instability of its environment. And what this means is that it packs a lot more energy and is therefore better at mobilizing lymph. This means that if you're toxic and full of stagnant lymph, you're going to experience some unpleasant symptoms when you switch to the fruitarian diet, much more so than if you were eating predominantly vegetables, because fruits will hydrate the body and initiate detox. And when you start moving acids in your body, you're going to feel that burn. So if you are looking to transition to the fruitarian diet, I recommend that you do it slowly and incrementally. For example, if you had, the omnivorous type of diet where you were eating everything, start slowly cutting things out. First, I would let go of animal products, dairy and meat, and then stay on that diet for 2 to 3 weeks as your body adjusts. After that, I would start letting go of the grains and starches. That's your potatoes, your rice, your beans. And then do that for a couple of weeks. After that, I would start cutting out cooked foods and increasing the ratio of the raw fruits and vegetables. And do that for a couple of weeks. And then I would start to switch to higher fruit content and do less vegetables. Now, at this point, you should be all raw. So the idea is you go all raw, and then you switch up the ratio where you increase fruits and you decrease vegetables until you're on all fruit. It's absolutely imperative that as you are undergoing this transition, you are supporting your glands, especially your adrenals. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself feeling weak, exhausted, and maybe have even difficulty breathing. Now, aside from herbs, some people may need glandulars if you have genetically weak glands. You also must support your kidneys. The reason people experience such strong healing crises is that fruits stir up acids, and if the eliminative channels are blocked, instead of getting excreted, these corrosive toxins just keep recirculating through the system, making you feel very ill. And that is definitely not pleasant. Another important thing I would recommend is doing a thorough parasite cleanse. You want to kill off as many pathological, proteolytic, and fungal organisms as possible, or you're going to experience a lot of cravings and digestive upsets. Now, the last thing I want to say is think about food in terms of energy, because we're not sustained by calories or nutrients. We are sustained by electricity, by the energy of the foods that we eat. And energy is information. So when we consume something, we are effectively taking in its vibrational frequency. So when we are eating raw plants, we're absorbing vitality, as opposed to eating processed food like macaroni and cheese that comes in box, or cereals that you see on the store shelves. Because if this is what you're eating, then you're not getting much in terms of energy and vitality, because those things are dead. If you're eating grains and legumes, same thing. Those seeds are dormant. They are inert foods, especially after you've boiled them to death. Now, it's a different story if you were to sprout them. Then you're actually turning the life back on, because when a seed starts growing into a plant, it becomes energized. Now it's alive. Now, if you look at meat eating, in terms of energy, it is the equivalent of eating death and suffering. And I don't care how humane a cattle farm claims to be, no living creature looks forward to being slaughtered. An animal senses when it is being led to slaughter, and it experiences fear. So it actually releases those hormones, those stress hormones, which you then consume. You know, I think that the biggest sin in animal farming is that these animals are bred for no other reason than to be tortured and killed, which is different from when, you know, you go and hunt and kill an animal in nature where it has lived its life and it doesn't see you coming, doesn't know what's happening. One shot to the head, boom, it's down instantly. That's different than consciously choosing to breed animals for them to just be tortured and killed. There is a documentary on YouTube called Dominion that is basically undercover footage filmed on the so-called humane animal welfare certified farms. And it's absolutely horrifying. I can't get through 5 minutes of it without sobbing. So if you're a carnivore and insist on eating animals, I challenge you to watch it. I think it's only fair that if you're going to consume meat, that you actually know what you're eating. And maybe it will change your mind. But aside from the ethical and humane reasons, I think that I have outlined a fairly compelling case as to why it's much more beneficial for us to eat raw plants. Now, I'm going to open this up to questions. So if you have any, ask away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivana. There are so many questions around. I think I start with the ones in the chat, and somebody asked, why did humans and chimpanzees diverge on the family tree?
Oh boy, I think we're gonna go down the rabbit hole here. I don't know if you're ready. All right, without sounding too crazy, for millennia, this planet had been visited by interstellar travelers who tampered with the DNA of the native hominids. They tweaked it around, they adjusted it, and that's why you see such leaps and bounds and the so-called missing links, where the evolution appears to move very, very slowly, and all of a sudden there's a spike, and all of a sudden humans are much more intelligent. All of a sudden they can do farming, and they've discovered fire. So the theory is, and to me this is more than a theory, is that human race has been interacting with extraterrestrial civilizations who have had a hand in our evolution. Does that do it? You're muted, Frederick.
Yes, thank you. And there's somebody else who asked a question. I don't know if this is a question or what. It's saying fructose is poorly absorbed by intestine and is more absorbed by the liver.
There is a bit of a divergence in opinion. Classically, it is taught that fructose is digested by the liver and is turned into glucose, which this makes no sense. Why would a superior sugar be turned into an inferior sugar? And Dr. Morse and Dr. Pat, who is the physiology and anatomy teacher that he has on, on his channel with him at times, they're saying that this does not make sense and is not true, in the same way that it doesn't make sense that toxins would be dumped into the vena cava instead of the kidneys. So I know what the person is saying. And yes, the conventional medical wisdom is that fructose is taken up into the liver and turned into glucose, which is then turned into fat. But based on having observed diabetics in his practice, that does not appear to be the case, because if fructose was being transmuted into glucose, diabetics would see a spike in their blood sugar and require insulin. And in his practice, Dr. Morse has observed that is not the case. That after the initial loading of a couple of weeks on fruit, diabetics have their sugars mostly stabilized on fruit. So that's what I have to say about that.
Okay. Another
I,
question.
I,
Can Ivana tell us what does she eat in a day? Give us an example.
Well, it depends on the day. I may start out with juice. I usually try to start with the least dense and gradually to go to the most dense. So I may start with juice. Could be orange juice, could be celery juice. I used to be more strict about having celery juice every single morning. And I did that for almost 2 years. And then I sort of started to diverge from that. And I will do different juices now. After that, I might have a smoothie. And usually I can blend some mangoes or bananas with a little bit of orange juice. And I would add a scoop either of alfalfa leaf juice or something like bone and connective tissue powder or a superfood powder with some kidney herbs. Mix it all together, drink that. And after that, I could have a salad. And usually I would mix cucumbers with avocados. And, or sometimes I add tomatoes. And I also like to wrap the salad in raw nori sheets. And that's about that. Or I can just have fruit throughout the day. Like it depends on how I feel. Lately, I've been really craving apples. So I've been eating a lot of apples throughout the day. So it's going to vary, also depending on the kinds of fruit I can get, what's in season. My really two favorite things are mangoes and watermelon. Like I can eat that all day. I'm not a grape person, but sometimes my body will crave it. And sometimes I will do, a short stint on grapes and lemons. So I've been a lot more loose and not so adherent to certain diet, but it is raw. When I cheat, and I have done this, sometimes like my worst offense is to go for cashew cheese. Okay? Like that gets me going. And sometimes, I've bought canned hearts of palm, but it's because sometimes I still have the salt cravings, but I don't add salt to anything. So this is sort of one of the ways I still get salt in my body, but this is very, very rare because nuts are also very hard on the kidneys. Nuts are actually mucus forming and are an acid ash food. So if you are on a raw diet, use nuts sparingly and only if you're not detoxing. All right?
hi,
Uh,
Ivana.
okay, go ahead, please.
Ivana, thank you so much. Connie speaking here. Thank you so much for your wisdom bombs and your clear voice and your clear mind. This is very, very appreciated. I actually have 2-3 questions to you. Can you talk a little bit about, I was told by many, like different nutritionists that I'm completely raw since June to add not necessarily animal fat, but especially for hormones, a certain type of fat, and not avocado, but coconut oil, flaxseed oil is really supporting the endocrine system. So this is one question. The second question is, where did it come from? For example, the only craving that I have on my raw food diet is, I don't know why, is salmon. I don't have any, and I have been vegetarian for many years. So what is in fish, or especially salmon, that might, this is the only craving that I have. So maybe these two questions that you could potentially address. Thank you.
Well, let me start with salmon. You may still have some parasites remaining that are specific to salmon, because I used to have fish cravings as well, and now they completely gone away, because I used to eat sushi. So once I did the parasite cleanse, the cravings have gone away. Now I am completely indifferent. I really couldn't care less about fish. I think about it. I actually don't think about it, but if I see it in front of me, I feel absolutely nothing. So anytime you have a craving for an animal product, there is a really good chance that you still have some parasites, and it's not you, it's the parasites that have the craving. Now, as far as dietary fat is concerned, dietary fat in studies has been shown to restrict and slow down lymphatic movement. Presence of dietary fat in the intestines reduced the contractility of the lymph vessels. See, fat is similar to proteins in that we don't need proteins, we need amino acids, and we also don't need fat, we need fatty acids. And all fruits and vegetables contain fatty acids, not just avocado. I mean, mango has 4 grams of fat. So you don't have to introduce fat into your system to get enough fatty acids. Fat also slows down detox in general because it's a heavy food to digest. What else would I say about fat? If you need omega-3, one of the best sources of omega-3, and the type that's found in fish. So let's say maybe you're craving salmon because you don't have enough omegas, right? You don't have enough omega-3. Little weed grass, purslane, contains omega-3 fatty acids that are of the same type that are found in fish. So if you want, you can get yourself some purslane powder and you can supplement. But I disagree that oils are necessary. We need fatty acids, not fats.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting, and I'm using wheatgrass, so that's good. And one last question related again to fat. I think since having done the solid food vacation, being raw and detox a lot, I've noticed that most of my skin becomes like it looks actually like a chicken. You know what I'm saying? It's in the sense of yeah. So I mean, I also lost weight, but it's not only that I lost weight, but my skin became like chicken skin. So, you know, it sounds weird, but any
I know
thoughts
what you
around
mean exactly.
yeah. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, that means that you have a lot of lymph backed up in your skin.
And moving forward is staying on detox and doing
Yes. Here's the thing, the more you mobilize things, the more they're going to start to come through. And whatever is being held in your skin, whatever lymph is there, you know, a lot of the times it's going to be coming through the skin rather than kidneys, because energy always uses the path of least resistance. Now, another thing about hormones and fat is that sometimes the reason you may not be producing adequate hormones is that when you're either physically or emotionally under stress. which makes the adrenal glands pump out cortisol and epinephrine. And these hormones are made from cholesterol. So when the body has a higher need for these hormones to moderate stress levels, it's going to prioritize that cholesterol to meet the demand for cortisol and epinephrine, which means you don't have enough left to make your sex hormones. You see? So that could be another reason why your hormone levels are not where they should be. Because if I recall correctly, and I hope it's okay that I share,
Yeah.
your system is chronically producing excessive levels of epinephrine, which is that fight or flight response. That's when the pupils become dilated, when our heart rate increases. And this usually happens when our adrenals are weak, that even moderate levels of stress are going to put us into that state. So if I were to make a connection here, when you are producing constantly high levels of adrenaline, that adrenaline is made from cholesterol, your fat, which would leave a deficit of cholesterol necessary to make you estrogen, progesterone, and so on. Okay?
So one solution would be looking it from the other way is addressing the adrenal glands to support the adrenal glands so they can relax.
Stress.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Because the adrenal glands are doing this in response to something. Something is stimulating them. And by the way, stress hormones are not just produced in response to emotional upsets or stress. Mold poisoning, surgeries, injuries, all qualify as stress, and the body starts to produce more of these stress hormones to tamp down the inflammation. So stress can also be physiological. When you are detoxing a little hard, that also puts stress on your body, causing a spike in the production of those stress hormones. So the more you can get a handle on stress, and in this case, I would also really work with the adrenal glands and the vagus nerve to sort of relax the system a bit and reduce the inflammation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you, and I'm really glad that you're in my life. So thank you so much for sharing, Ivanna. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ivana, there are some people who are going to ask questions, but I also have a question. At a point, I remember the first time we were meeting over the Zoom, you were talking about an autoimmune disease. And I am lost. I don't know if it is me who didn't attend all the meetings or what, but did you heal yourself? Did you get out of this situation totally, or it is still half?
Well, it depends on what you believe falls under that purview. I was told that my hair loss was part of the autoimmune response. But the truth is, there's no such thing as autoimmune. When they tell you you have autoimmune, what they're really saying, we have no freaking clue what's wrong with you. So we're just going to blame you that you're creating this problem. Okay, that's what they're really saying. And of course, their solution is to put you on steroids or sometimes even chemotherapy to suppress your immune system. But the body is not stupid. The body would never attack itself. What they call autoimmunity is when the system is so backed up with lymph that the body is fighting the inflammation, the assault, and the corrosiveness of that lymph. It's not fighting itself. It's not going after its own tissues. It's the acids that break down the tissues. So that's the misunderstanding. So I would say 90% of that I'm good with now. I mean, I used to have horrible allergies, joint pain, arthritis type pain, all, you know, that kind of stuff. The only thing I still haven't fixed yet is my hair. It gets better, then it gets worse. You know, it's back and forth. You know, the last time, my last fast I did, I was shedding a lot, was coming out in clumps, and then it stopped, but then it wasn't. So that's it. One of the things that I still have that I'm dealing with, but that is if you were to assume that hair was part of that autoimmune response. But otherwise, I've solved a lot of my issues. I mean, I used to get seizures. I would just drop like a sack of potatoes and pass out. And I'd come to convulsing with you know, my jaw clenched. And it was a scary thing because you didn't know when it was going to happen. I mean, I could have been crossing the street, you know? So that was one of the scarier things. Brain fog, I was constipated for 20 years. I couldn't digest anything at all. The way food came in would come out the same way. All right, so I had zero digestion. My liver was horrible. My skin was in terrible condition. Breakouts, nonstop. But I also was on a lot of medications, which have left a lot of chemical residues in my body. And specifically for skin and hair, which is where I feel the problem is that I was on Accutane for nearly a year. And Accutane is an acne drug. And it is an extremely, extremely bad drug. It is so bad that in order for you to take it, you actually have to sign a waiver where you promise not to get pregnant. You must be on 2 different types of birth control. And you must sign a document stating that if you do, for some reason, get pregnant, you will terminate, that you will not carry that pregnancy to term, because this drug causes such horrible side effects and birth defects in fetuses. And what this drug does, it suppresses the skin. So when you are on, and it's also horrible for your liver, it's because Accutane is super, super concentrated vitamin A, an artificial form of it called tretinoin. So it destroys your liver, it suppresses the skin, it dries you out completely, your body stops producing oil. So when you are on something like that for a year, it suppresses the skin and then you get off it. Boy, did my skin explode. So, and of course, hair grows out of skin. And I've talked to other people who had been on this medication, and they also experienced hair loss. So everybody's different. But hair loss comes from lack of circulation to the head. It's caused by acids chewing on your hair follicles. So it's one of the harder things to restore, especially considering that the head is fairly far away from the kidneys, because kidneys are what is supposed to excrete the acids. And if on top of that you have swollen lymph nodes, which I have, I mean, growing up, I have tonsils. My tonsil would be so swollen, I would look like a chipmunk. I had recurring horrible ear infections that were so bad that I had to be sedated just to put me out of pain. So I had a lot of stuff going on in the head area since I was a child. Constant colds and flus, antibiotics. So it sort of accumulates in your body, and eventually it reaches a point of saturation where the body starts to break down. And then you have to restore balance, and the body has its own priorities, what it goes after first. So, I may want to have my hair squared away, but the body goes, we have bigger fish to fry. We gotta work with your liver and kidneys and all that stuff first, because those are actually vital organs. So you have to trust the intelligence of the body and doing the work, and just keep going, because that's the only way you get better. And the longer you're on it, I can tell you from experience, the better it gets. My adrenal glands were so bad. There were times in my life where I could hardly stay awake. I had no energy. Like, there was a time that I thought that I was narcoleptic. I literally could not keep my eyes open. Going to work was torture because I had to be awake and I had stuff to do and I couldn't do it. And I looked forward to the time that I would be off of work so I could just sleep and I would be dead to the world. And it took about 3 years of dry fasting to get my adrenals back online. So these things will take time depending on the severity of your condition. Some people don't have a lot of problems, don't have a lot of weaknesses. They may not have as much lymphatic stagnation. So when they go on a raw diet, they feel great. They have all this energy, their mind is sharp. And other people that are more impacted, they're going to have a harder time, because when they go on a raw diet, and more so fruitarian diet, they're going to unleash all of that garbage. Can't hear you, Frederick.
Yes, I've heard you very well. And there's something else I really wanted to add on. When you are doing, when you started the fast, you had not yet gotten into this diet lifestyle of this nutrition of where you are fruitarian. You started the fast, tried with the dry fast, then you later learned about the fruitarian lifestyle, or it is the other way?
The other way around. I
Okay.
started with fruits, and after 3 months on fruits, I wasn't getting any filtration. Another problem I had was my kidneys. I was almost nearly in kidney failure. My creatinine levels were at the top end of the chart, were as high as the creatinine level chart goes. So my kidneys were absolutely shot. And 3 months on all fruit did nothing to open up my kidneys. And I was watching Dr. Morse's videos, and he was talking about dry fasting as a way to open up the kidneys. And he was talking about 24 to 36 hours on a dry fast, that they see that people start getting filtration. So that's when I started doing that. So I started with 24 hours once a week, and I did that for probably like 6 months before I started to increase the time. And even with dry fasting, it took at least another month or even longer before I started to see sediment in my urine. So I started off with fruits, and then I incorporated dry fasting in conjunction with a fruit diet.
And later you learned about the prolonged dry fast. That's when you now started to go beyond the 24 hours. You just started to go beyond 4 days, eh?
Well, it started off with 24 hours. Then I went to 36 hours, and I did that for a while. Then I went to 42 hours, and I stayed at 42 hours maybe for another month. And then I started to increase it. I went to, 3 days, and then I did 3 days for a while. And then there was about a 6-month window where I was doing 4 to 5 days every single week, where I would only eat 3 or 4 days out of the week, and the rest I would be dry fasting. And I did that for 6 months. And that worked out very well for me. And after that, I started to increase to 5. And once I've gotten to 5, I started to really open up to the idea of doing more. I had read Dr. Filanov's book. I was watching people on YouTube who were doing 7 and 10 days. So I started to think to myself, I think I could do this. And after the 5-day plateau, I went on an 85-day juice feast to really clean out my gut. And that was the game changer that allowed me to extend my dry fasting window. That's when I did the 7-day fast. And then after that, I started to increase it to 9, to 11, and then 12 days is the latest I had done and the longest I had gone.
Thank you so much. There is some balance that I needed us to discuss a little about, because if you look at Dr. Finilov's recommendations, that before a person gets into dry fast, this is a 3-month period of preparation. And if you check what he recommends at this point, is like he's taking people from where the diet that we are talking about, that other one where there's meat, there's dairy, there's all that. You eliminate all these things, so you remain a little more of raw. And then after you started the fast, in between those periods, he still recommends raw. So at a point, it's like healing with the dry fast. They're like one. They're like one and the same thing. And then I don't know what happens then. Later, somebody is now allowed to go back to this food. Now you go back to how you have been eating carelessly. I don't know if you have realized that.
I don't know if you see the contradiction here. I don't know if he sees this, because to prepare for the dry fast, he tells people to get off of animal products, right? That means that he understands that they are an impediment, right? But then on the other hand, then he says, but when you get off a dry fast, then go back to eating, your fish or your chicken or your eggs. So these things don't make sense. You understand? Because if they were good for you, then there would be no need to remove them from your diet in preparation for the dry fast.
I get you.
So, sometimes people are not even aware themselves of the contradiction, but to me, it makes no sense. Because if, eating fish and all, meat and chicken was good for you, then why get rid of them to prepare for the dry fast? So obviously he understands that they clog up the system. They're heavy on the system. But if that's the case, then why recommend them afterwards? And another thing about it is, the way I see it, doing a fast and a deep cleanse, and then going back on the products that have caused, disease in the body, it's kind of like cleaning the floor while you're schlepping all over it with muddy boots. What's the point? What's the point of cleaning just to clog it back up again?
Got you very well. It is something that I've been also thinking about, not so much, but I'm like, there's something that is not coming in here clearly.
You know what I see here? This is a matter of energy and vibrational frequency. I have talked about the third density consciousness and fourth density consciousness. So the majority of Earth population is moving out of the third density into fourth, where we become less dense physically, more light body, right? So when you look at Dr. Filanov and you look at Satmarga, to me, what I see clearly is Dr. Filanov still very much in the 3D vibrational frequency, where there are these old ideas of what the body needs. And also on that level, when the body is more crude, that food, that type of food is actually compatible with the body, as opposed to when you raise your vibration and ascend more into the fourth density, where that dense food, that animal food, is no longer appropriate and will actually cause a problem and bring the frequency, the vibrational frequency of the body down. So the way I see it, Filanov is more 3D, whereas Satmarga is more 4D, where there's more expansion of consciousness, there's more light in the body, more refined frequency. So that's my personal take on this.
And you see, if you, by the way you're comparing, it's very clear. I get you very well, because these are the same things, I say, sentiments or the same ideas I have. It's like Dr. Filanov has no idea what Satmarga is doing. Totally no idea. This guy is like, he's in another, the way you are saying, another consciousness, or maybe I'll say another realm or another level of way of doing things. And yet Dr. Filanov is at this level of, it's like a struggle where there's a problem, let's solve it. There's a problem, let's solve it. But now, how do we maintain a total, clean, healthy life? Now we don't have diseases. We are now just living pure the way we should be living. I think that's where that point comes in. That difference comes in. Satmarga is not even doing the medical fast. It has nothing to do. He's not even sick. He's just fasting as a lifestyle. So I understand, and I think at a point, maybe Dr. Filanov may never learn it, may never know it, but we who are in this journey, who have started at least to get all this knowledge early enough, will be able to know the little big difference. Someone like Satmarga has nothing to do with cooked food. Totally doesn't take. The only thing that he said he takes is the nuts for the sake of building up, maybe to add some weight, then that puts him onto the fast. But it doesn't take any cooked food. So this means this guy has a different type of body, very different. I got you. Now, somebody has a question, or maybe let me get this. Let me just read it. Can you have the following foods in a frugal food? The way it's written, frugal diet, parsley, spinach, lettuce, garlic, onions, and cucumbers. And there's also added carrots.
So no onions, no garlic, no spinach. Those are nightshades. They're also high thiol / sulfur foods. Those are pungent foods. They're referred to as the toxics by Arnold Aird, the guy who wrote the Mucusless Diet book, right? So stay away from that. Cucumbers are great. Cucumbers are actually fruits. They're non-sweet fruits. Lettuces are okay. What else was there?
Did you talk about carrots?
Carrots, a little high in sugar makes them starchy, but okay. You know, they're not detoxifiers, but they're fine. And parsley is an herb and it's great. But the thing about vegetables, remember we talked about fiber in vegetables and grasses, like your lettuces, your herbs. The best way to consume them is to juice them, because unlike herbivores, we don't have the 3 stomachs. We don't have the GI tract that is 20 times the length of our spine. So we cannot actually break down vegetable matter effectively. And the best way to consume it is to remove the fiber, the cellulose. And the way you do it is by juicing.
Thank you. There was a very long one here. Let me just read it for you. This is sent from the WhatsApp, and Eric forwarded it to me. It's about, let me just read it. I have a question for Ivanna. As a female, I've had since puberty a very hairy body, still waxing my arms and armpits every 3 months. The hair growth has lessened over the years. My face has endured appellation of 30 years and is finally okay. My legs still endure a shaving blade on a weekly basis. Hair on my head is very fine and breaks easily. My mom has the same fine hair on the head as me, and grandma on my father's side was as hairy as a caveman or caveman. Any suggestions? I've been mostly on fruits now for almost 2 years and mostly raw vegan since 2005. Have not done any herbs due to financial reasons. Thank you.
All right, so what it sounds like to me is that this person has her HPA axis down, and HPA stands for hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals. So there is an imbalance between the ratio of hormones where testosterone seems to be too high for a female. So either this is an adrenal weakness, or this is primary adrenal weakness when adrenal glands themselves are genetically weak or damaged, or this is a pituitary or hypothalamus issue, which would lead to secondary adrenal failure, because hypothalamus governs the pituitary, which regulates our adrenals and thyroid. So adrenals are the ones, along with the pituitary, that are responsible for this, because the pituitary also controls ovaries, telling them to produce estrogen and progesterone. And adrenal glands also produce a certain number of sex hormones. So in order to fix this, you have to know if this is a strictly adrenal issue, or if this is more of a pituitary / hypothalamus issue, or all of the above. And outside of looking at someone's eyes, I would ask a person questions like, how tall are you? somebody who is really short or really tall, that's one of the signs that lets us know that a person has a pituitary weakness. If a woman has irregular periods or difficult periods with a lot of bleeding, or maybe she has no period, that's another sign that the pituitary is involved. So these are some of the things that you look at. Now, you can still fix the problem while you are raw, but it would take so much longer than if you introduced herbs and even glandulars, depending on what's needed. And of course, the thin hair on the head, a couple of things. One, when your androgens, your male hormones, are higher than they should be, you're going to have hair on in other parts of your body, but your hair on the head is going to be thinning. And this is specifically related to excessively high cortisol. Cortisol that's out of control leads to hirsutism, which is hair on face and other places where women should normally grow hair. And if this is a cortisol issue, there may also be skin discoloration. Like the person might have really dark areas like underarms, groin, sometimes even on the face. So that's another sign. So my suggestion is to work on the glands here. You can fix it without herbs, but it will take a much longer time. It's going to be a much longer road to get there.
Thank you. Then this is
Is there any
Karen.
chance,
Karen,
sorry, is there any chance of me asking a question?
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll ask this later.
Oh, thanks. I did put it in the chat, but I'm not sure if you've read it or not. Ivanna, I'm actually a regenerative detoxification specialist through Dr. Moss as well, and I've gone through his level 1 and his lymphatic iridology level 2 course. I actually had ocular melanoma, which was cancer. And obviously that's what led me down the road of training through Dr. Morse, and I have actually gone some way to healing myself through that. I've also done Patty's anatomy and physiology course. I've done a number of nutritional courses, and if I'm honest, I could go on forever about what I've done. You sound very similar to what I've done in terms of, you've had some health issues, and you've gone down the rabbit hole of just finding out one thing, then learning it another, then learning it another. I actually, unfortunately, well, just one other thing before I go on to the actual operation they did to me. Have you heard of Tyler Tallman?
No.
No, I've actually certified through his academy as well, and I'm a sclerologist, so I actually read the whites of the eyes as well as the irises. But I'm just, if I'm honest, I still don't feel like I'm fully where I need to be, because I still have brain fog and a lot of it, and I think it was a combination of a really poor diet for decades, and then huge stress levels on a consistent basis that caused it. I'm trying to somehow, I've done tons of stuff in terms of about 3.5 years nearly I've been at this, and they did tell me that 90% of people that actually get diagnosed with ocular melanoma come back and actually get secondary liver cancer. I now understand why that is. It's because obviously the liver's fatty when you go in initially, and I, like myself, I also had lots of tonsillitis problems in the past, like you said yourself. I'm just wondering, I'm trying to somehow get to the end of the road, if that makes sense. I do find it difficult staying on a fully raw 100% fruitarian diet, but I have done it for long periods of time. And I'm just wondering, I'd like to think that somehow at some point I could find some balance. I am aware that when I'm on a fruitarian diet, and I've done a lot of cascade dry fasting as well, which is mega powerful with a fruitarian diet, where I've not eaten or drunk for 36 hours, and then I've refed the next day on fruit, and then I've done that again in terms of not eating or drinking the next day, refed on fruit, and I've done that for 16 full days on the trot. And then I've just had like fruit for 14 days, and I felt like a massive elation in my brain. And then I felt throughout this whole process, I felt my brain running on lots and lots of different occasions. Like it kind of runs down the back of my ears. I don't know if you've ever felt that yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's the ionization of chemistry and the actual running of the acidic waste when it's actually, you know, it's running out of your lymph that's been sort of solid and stuck up there. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yes. I mean, I used to have my cerebellum that was so backed up, the dizziness and the headaches that were excruciating, but that goes away. What I have to say about this is that in cases that are this involved, fruit diet is not enough. You have to do a hardcore, prolonged, hard dried fasting. And I'm talking about 9, 11 days, multiple fasts.
Right, I see, because I've never done more than sort of about 42.
Because it's not enough. And what I also like about this is that it allows me more flexibility when I want to scale down the fruit a bit and have more veggies. Because when you're doing a long dry fast, you're going in really, really deep. And nothing really dissolves brain plaque better than dry fasting. But what makes dry fasting effective is when you have a certain number of days, because this process and this mechanism is time sensitive. You're not getting anywhere at all in the first 3 days. You're still burning through glycogen. So if you're only doing 24 to 36 hours, you're not reaping any serious benefits from dry fasting. You have to have passed the 3-day mark to have gone through the first acidotic crisis, which is when the body has burned through glucose, through glycogen, and is now going after fat. And then you have to get past that before your body starts to actually now go into deep clean mode. So for you to have any degree of cleansing happen on a dry fast, you got to be at least 4 days in.
Right, I see.
You see, it's just, you cannot avoid the fact that there are certain processes that have to happen, and they take a certain amount of time. Now, what also happens is that if people have a lot of fat, then it's going to take them even longer, because when you have substantial fat stores, your body has to burn through all of that before it actually starts to cannibalize mutated cells and tissues.
Right, I understand.
Because the body doesn't need to go after its own tissues until it runs out of fuel. And fat provides ample fuel. So another way to optimize your dry fast is to lose as much fat as possible. And that's going to happen when you are on a raw diet. You don't hold on to fat. So, and this is another advantage that raw foodists have over people who either eat omnivorous diet or eat carnivorous diet, because raw foodists will go into the deep cleansing mode quicker because they have less fat to burn through and stuff like that. So there are many different factors that are involved in this. Now, another thing is that since you're an iridologist, then you have to know if you have any major brain weaknesses, because it's one thing to clean out lymph, and that's great. But if you still have tissue weakness there, where cell function is affected, your brain is still not going to work that well until you fix that.
I actually did look at my own eyes. I've got comparisons to 18 months ago. It was about 12 to 18 months after I'd been aggressively detoxing. I wasn't an iridologist at that point. I was just trying to find my way forward, really. So I have got photos, and I have seen now. I am a certified iridologist. I've got photographs now, and I can see that previously my eyes were so much worse than they are now. So what I have been doing has been getting so far, but I don't think I've quite got to that next level of cleansing yet, which I know I'm nearly there in terms of getting the knowledge, but I've just not quite took it to that next level. So I did have about 5 lacunas going in my brain area, in my right eye. The lacunas was black, degenerative. So I actually do know that I had brain lesions as well.
So
and I've still got them, but they're a lot less now. And instead of having 5 and one of them being quite big, I've now got about 3, and the other 2 have gone. Well, when I say they've gone, it's still an acute condition in my head. So I've still got the white lymph, but it's not actually black anymore, or brown, or even yellow. But what I've noticed is that the other lacunas have gone down considerably, and there's healing lines going into them now. So I'm getting the blood into the degenerative areas, and I'm getting the lymph out because the lacunas are opening up now, and they've opened up. They're not closed like initially there was. So I am aware that what I've done so far has definitely gone so far into being good in terms of helping, and my bowels exploded when I first started on the fruit. That is where the magic happens, isn't it? They absolutely exploded, and I eliminated worms, parasites, black thick mucoid plaque. My head started running. I was shivering on the bed. Honestly, I've really been through it, and I think emotionally I'm drained, because I've just been at this for 3.5 years now, and I know it probably sounds a bit sort of, I don't know, but I feel like I've lost my old life, which I actually did quite enjoy. And now I've got a life where I'm really restricted. I feel constantly drained, because I'm constantly either rebuilding or detoxing, because I did get down to about 6.5 stone at one point, and I was initially 13 stone when I was diagnosed with cancer. So to say that I've absolutely gone down to the bone is an understatement. The only things I haven't done now, I've not done an enema, and I've not done a liver flush, and I've not done long dry fasting, but I have done the cascade dry fasting in shorter periods. And without a doubt, something did happen over that period of time, because I've never felt that feeling. It was like a whizzing feeling in my head. And I think that was the stem cells regenerating, and the ionization of the black plaque actually run behind my ears. So I do think it kind of goes somewhere, maybe not the way that I need to go. But my other concern is that if you've got something so severe like I had, I don't think I'm as severe now, nowhere near. But if you've got something severe like I had, would dry fasting be too problematic for the body? Could it completely lock the body up?
No, since you've already been raw, you have primed the pump. But a very important and largely overlooked aspect that must be considered is the mental and emotional shift. When we are ill and we get on this journey, we become sort of obsessed with the illness or dis-ease. You understand? We focus so much on it that we continue to amplify it. So it's almost like, you know, you love what you say you hate, which is your illness, which is the bodily dysfunction, which has become an entity unto itself. And we focus so much on it. It becomes this thing. It's like another person that we have given life. So the shift that has to happen is moving away from that and stopping living in constant pursuit of wanting to get better.
Mhm.
There has to be a greater emotional balance where we approach life with more joy and looking to do more things that bring us joy and happiness, that we enjoy, rather than focusing on things. For example, if someone hates, let's say, habanero peppers, they're really hot and irritating, right? And yet they continue to eat them every single day, then you're going to say, well, it doesn't look to me like you actually hate these peppers. Otherwise, you wouldn't be eating them. And it's the same when we are constantly focusing on the things that are wrong, looking for more things to fix. You understand? Because the body follows our consciousness.
Played well, they've shown top quality in some aspects of their game, but they were caught twice on counter-attack, one from starting from a goalkeeper in the second half as well.
Can we,
starting
whoever's
the
talking
second
about
counter-attack as well. And overall, I would say that what have you, for them now is important to analyze well. Where can we improve? And as you said, it's at the back.
I'm really confused about what just happened.
Yeah, so am I.
Ravi, are you talking to us or you are talking? Let me unmute him. Maybe mute him. Where he's gone. He's gone. I can't see him.
Maybe he realised what was happening and now he's muted himself. He must have been on mute by accident.
All right. So the idea is that we must start addressing emotional stuff in conjunction with the physical. And one of the things you can use to guide you is Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. Now, anything that's going on the left side of the body is related to emotional problems connected to the female energy. Mother, sister, wife, what have you. Any issues that are happening on the right side of the body are connected to difficulties with male. Most often, this is the father figure. So you have to sort of look at what side of the body the issue is on and which side of the body is worse off. And you can look for this by checking out your eyes, because when we look at the eyes, it's fairly easy to see which eye looks weaker, has more lacunas, has more radius solaris, lesions, more lymph, and so on. So that tells you or gives you a hint which formative relationships that have underlying unresolved trauma that are actually driving a lot of the physical issues. And then you start to focus on specific organs. And this is where you would go to Louise Hay's book, where it tells you, oh, if you have problem with your shoulder, then you're probably carrying a burden of some sort as relates to either male or female. And shoulders usually have to do with romantic partners. If you have problems with ears, like I did, and I still get them, they come and go as I detox. That is usually not wanting to hear something. And a lot of the times it's because you don't want to hear your parents arguing when the home environment for the child growing up is very unstable. So that would cause issues with ears. Liver, of course, holds anger, any unresolved issues, or not being able to express anger constructively and bottling things in. You know, I had a client who, after a liver flush, his mouth exploded with sores, and you know, he got dandruff and so on. So look at the reactions here. So liver responsible for anger, holding on to anger. Mouth is about speaking up, speaking out your truth. Now you go and you detox the liver, you flush it, your mouth breaks out and sores. So what is coming out? Angry words that you are not saying to someone, you see? So what I have come to realize, that it's not enough to focus on just physical, and it's not enough to focus exclusively on the energetic and emotional aspects. These work hand in hand, because consciousness works through the body, and the body follows wherever the consciousness takes it. I talked about using faster EFT that was developed by Robert Smith, and you can look him up on YouTube. And there are scores of people who have learned his method, who had all kinds of health issues, fibromyalgia, cancers, all kinds of autoimmune disorders. And after they started working on their emotional stuff, these issues went away, and they weren't even doing the diet. There is a reason why placebo effect is real. Sometimes we get so enmeshed with the idea of being unwell that we perpetuate it when it's no longer necessary. You see, we continue to recreate the condition when we could just let it go.
Yeah, I understand.
There is a reason, you know, this has been documented. When people were hypnotized, the suggestion was given that they have herpes, and instantly their lips broke out in sores. Why does this happen? Because the mind does not know the difference between a real thing and imaginary thing. And as long as we carry the consciousness and the energy of dis-ease or being unwell, or health and vitality being a struggle and being something unattainable, then we will continue to create that as our reality.
Yeah, do you know, I totally understand. And I realise that there is some underlying issues emotionally that I don't even know what they are. And that's what makes it even more difficult, because I'm not quite sure. And because I'm not sure, I need to do a lot more work, clearly. I will
You don't
read
need
that
to
book.
know. The beauty of this faster EFT method is that you don't need to know. It will come up because you start by tapping on the physical issue. I have this problem, and you go, you know, you locate it, you measure it, you gauge how intense it is on the scale from 0 to 10. You know where it is, and then you aim at it while you're tapping. I let it go, I release and let go. What happens is that all of a sudden you start getting flashbacks and memories, things that you forgot about. And you go, holy crap, I totally forgot about this. But what it is it gives you a breadcrumb, what to go after.
So do you think do you think this would actually eliminate the plaque from the inside of my brain as well? Do you think it's that powerful, or does that require dry fasting to get that? I realise there's layers of an onion and you need to keep peeling off the layers. So I realise it's not just one thing that'll do it, but I'm just wondering how powerful the Louise Hay method. There's also a girl called Ina Segal. I don't know if you've heard of Ina Segal.
No.
No, she does something similar. She's got something called The Secret Language of Your Body, I think it's called. I haven't actually read it yet, but I've done some work regarding Ina's, but not a lot, if I'm honest, because I still struggle emotionally. I struggle to even get it. It's very strange. Like when she talks, like you talk, and it makes perfect sense to me, but for some reason, it's maybe too far beyond what I can understand at this stage. When I hear Ina Segal talk, I literally just turn off. And she's a lovely woman, but I just think it don't make any sense to me.
Well, then she's not for you. It doesn't mean she's wrong. It's just that's not your thing. If you don't resonate with something, let it go. That's your sign that it's not for you.
But it seems to work for a lot of other people. It seems to work with a lot of other people. She seems to be quite successful.
Because they're different people. We all have different belief systems. And when we match, when our frequency matches with someone else's, we find ourselves to be really in sync. There is understanding, there's harmony. But when the frequencies are divergent, then there is sort of a repulsion that happens. So that's normal. You take what works for you and you leave what doesn't. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's what would you recommend I do a liver flush then? That's something I've not done, and an enema, or would you say that the issues are not?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know that the head is connected to the GI tract. The head sits right on top of our transverse colon. And no matter how well you think you've cleaned your gut out, I guarantee you that there's a lot more. Now, I recommend that you go back and watch Dr. Filonov's webinar where he introduced the abdominal massage and the honey massage and the spinal massage. And I would do all three, and I would also add castor oil packs over the liver and abdomen. And I would do that for a bit before I would attempt a liver flush. And there is a better liver, yes.
Ivanna, how do you do the liver, the castor oil pack?
All right, so you're going to need organic, hexane-free castor oil that comes in a glass bottle. You're going to need a piece of flannel fabric that's made from organic cotton and it hasn't been bleached or chemically processed. You're also going to need a glass jar where you're going to store that flannel after you're done with your pack. Now, the way this works is that you would do the massages first, where you stimulate the liver, you stimulate your GI tract, you stimulate the nerves, the vagus nerve. And then what I would do, I would first take some essential oils like lemon, something that's astringent, that stimulates. And you can even add a little turmeric and even a wee bit of cayenne pepper, just a tiny bit, and rub that in first. Then you will soak the flannel with castor oil and you apply it to the area. All right. So you attach it to wherever you want it to go, and then you wrap that area because castor oil is really messy. So you want, one, you want to keep that pack in place, and two, you want to protect your clothing and your furniture and so on. Now, some people wrap themselves with plastic wrap, which I strongly discourage because castor oil pulls. So you put plastic on top of it, and then when you put heat on top of it, it's a recipe for disaster. You don't want to release toxic chemicals into your skin, right? What I use is I take ACE bandages, which are these really stretchy bandages, and they come in really long sizes, and I wrap myself in them. And then you put down a towel, and then you need a heating pad or a hot water bottle that you're going to apply on top of the castor oil pack, which
I'm
is going
feeling,
to activate it.
well, I'm interrupting you a lot, but I'm feeling
Yeah.
this one just needs a practical. For people to understand it, they will have to see how you are doing it. Maybe we'll do it not today, another time. Maybe we'll create for it a time.
Well,
but just finish.
I can't show you how to because it's really messy.
Okay.
Doing castor oil pack is extremely messy. So I'm just
Okay.
describing. But if you go on YouTube, there's lots of instructional videos, and you can find lots of articles. You can search how to do castor oil packs.
Ivanna, it's something I've never done. I realise that I haven't finished my healing journey. I realise there's a lot more that I need to do to get to where I need to go. What does the castor oil do? Is it something to do with it being? Is it I can't remember now. I've done the anatomy of it. Is it hydrophilic or hydrophobic? It's hydrophobic, isn't it? The oil, is that correct?
Well, what it does, it mobilizes lymph because lymph is a lipid-based system. What castor oil also does, it stimulates parasympathetic nerves, which shifts you into rest and digest mode where the body can restore itself. So it stimulates peristalsis. It actually helps soften the intestinal walls and loosen up plaque. Another thing that castor oil does, it has a pulling effect. So it actually will pull edema out of you if you have water retention due to acidosis. And it stimulates liver function. It also increases absorption of lipids through the skin, because if you have a liver that's weak or really congested, then you don't really have the ability to absorb fats, to digest or absorb them. So doing castor oil pack is also going to help you with lipid digestion and absorption. And it can also stimulate glandular function. So you can apply castor oil packs on any part of your body. It reduces inflammation. Like you can apply it to your thyroid and parathyroid area, to your kidneys. We have a great protocol, castor oil pack protocol, to help open up kidney filtration, which involves using castor oil pack while applying turmeric, cayenne pepper, and I believe black pepper with massage to the kidney area to sort of wake the kidneys up and stimulate them. And then you apply the castor oil pack. And if you do that every single day for at least a week, you should be seeing sediment in your urine. Now, there's no better detoxifier than grapes. Grapes, lemon, and ginger. It's not enough to just be raw or to just be on fruit. If you go on the grape juice or blended grapes with lemon and ginger for a month, you're going to be amazed at what you can accomplish.
I did that, but without the ginger. I didn't have the ginger in it.
And you have to add a lot of lemon. Like, let's say per 24 ounces of grape juice. And I'm not talking about master fast system. That's a completely different animal. There's a lot of things in that system that I personally find disagreeable and I find less than helpful. So I'm talking about fresh grape juice, black grapes, and per 24 ounces, you would use juice of 3 lemons or limes, and per 32 ounces, you would use juice of 4 lemons or limes. So that's quite a bit of lemon juice. And with that, you would use the juice of, of ginger, but a nice chunk, like half the size of your palm, maybe even more.
Right.
And then you only drink that. This is cancer protocol. The things you can get out of your body doing this is unbelievable.
Got you. I have done it. I did it for a month, and it is grueling. It really is difficult to keep up. I did it for a month, and I noticed that I started growing new skin around the back of my top of my the back of my mouth, and all new skin started growing. So I knew it were working and it were doing a brilliant job, but just sustaining it, God, it was just grueling for me.
You can sustain anything as long as you have good enough reason and motivation to do that.
Yeah, I understand.
So that means you haven't found a motivating mechanism to keep you going.
I think
So,
what's happened is I've spent such a long time doing it. I think initially, like I did 14 months on full fruit. That was it. I didn't, and it was. I did find it hard. I'm not kidding. I mean, there were times when I literally just broke down in tears. But I still stayed on it because I knew it was going to save my life. So I knew. I feel like now I've gone so far. I'm getting there slowly, but I'm not there yet. But I do feel like I don't feel like I'm in a life-threatening situation anymore. So it's getting a bit harder for me to actually sustain the persistence, and it's difficult because I don't know, like you say, whether the next stage is the emotional stage or whether I still do need to continue to detox.
Well, emotions are not the next stage. They should be, that work should be happening simultaneously with physical detox. That's not something that you do at a later date. Actually doing the emotional work is going to accelerate physical healing and detox. So they have to go hand in hand. But if you are finding it hard to find motivation to keep going, ask yourself, what feeling well and healthy is going to enable you to do that you currently are not able to do?
Yeah, I understand. I realize I've got to continue to do it. I'm under no illusion that I know I'm not there yet. So I am aware of that. The castor oil packs, I've still got lumps on the left hand side of my leg. Now I know that my left kidney was the major kidney that gave way, because I don't know if you've ever had your kidneys fail on you, but I had.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so you get that feeling, don't you? You know, like when they're regenerating, it's like a dull ache. Have you ever felt that dull? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
The dull ache that I felt was mainly on the left side, and I had eye cancer, which is ocular melanoma, in my left eyeball socket. So all my problems seem to be on my left side of my body.
All right, so let me stop you right here. I'm going to interrupt you. All right, so look at what's happening here. Left kidney, left side related to females. What's your relationship like with your mother? Kidneys specifically are about fear, insecurity, maybe not feeling loved or feeling secure in the mother's love. And additionally, legs are about moving forward. So fears can't hold us back and not allow us to move forward. Eyes Are we seeing the truth clearly? Are we lying to ourselves? And if we're lying to, and are we lying to ourselves so that we don't have to move in the direction that we know we need to go, but we don't want to because we think that it's going to be too much work or too painful? So these things give you clues. Think about when the leg problem first developed. What was happening in your life at that time?
Well, I
Yeah.
distinctly remember actually running because I started to feel really, really depressed and down and low and fed up, and I obviously didn't know why it was. Obviously, I was having extreme lower back pain at the time. I realised my kidneys had gone, and I remember the leg specifically. That happened as I was running. I remember saying to my wife, I don't know what's happening, but as I'm running, I'm noticing some lumps come up on the left-hand side of my leg, and I'm not quite sure why that is. And I didn't know at the time because I had absolutely no health knowledge whatsoever. So that was
Were
the
you
first time
having
I noticed.
issues with your wife around that time in your life?
Well, do you know, nothing that I can actually put my finger on and say was unusual to any other time.
Any other stressful, traumatic situations?
Yeah,
job, anything like that?
Yeah, huge amounts of stress, massive amounts of, I'm talking enormous amounts of stress.
Right, so those are the events that you have to look at. The idea is that we internalize certain traumatic events and we store them in our brain to keep us safe. But what that does is that it continues to recreate the condition and keeps us stuck in it. So the point of the emotional work, specifically the faster EFT method, is to unlink our physical condition from those events. And what we do is we sort of reduce any pain or emotional distress associated with that. And then we change the memory of what happened so that it no longer triggers us.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, so this is the type of work that I think would really help move the needle forward.
I mean, I think what's happened as well is because it's such a shock when you're diagnosed and then they give you no hope at all and pretty much tell you that that's it, you've had it. And then it took about 4 months because they literally frightened me to death to not look at anything. They said, don't look at it, you know, because I said, look, I don't understand how all this money is put into cancer research and all these hundreds of trillions of pounds over decades and decades and decades and decades, but yet you're still treating people the same today that you did almost 100 years ago. It doesn't really make any sense to me. Where's all this money going? So I said to them, look, I'm going to find out why I've got this problem, this cancer, and I'm going to come back and tell you how I'm going to resolve it. And they says, oh, you know, don't look into anything. You know, I think they probably knew by my persona and the way that I am that I was going to resolve this issue by hook or by crook, with or without them. And I think that they tried to convince me that there was nothing that I could do. Don't look at anything because it's going to frighten you to death. And you might be one of the lucky ones that never gets this back. So I actually didn't look into anything for about 4 months. And then eventually I got lucky. I started looking into health rather than sickness, rather than the liver, because they did frighten me to death. So rather than actually go and look at anything to do with the liver cancer, which they told me that I was probably going to get, I looked at how I could improve my health and I started going down. And this is how I've got to this stage now. But I'm not joking, Ivanna. I don't know, you've probably done the same, but I went through about 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, literally for almost 2.5 years of studying. And I were absolutely burnt out with the studying. I mean, it was just insane. What the things I've studied has just been absolutely insane. And I still don't feel like I'm fully there yet. Does that make sense? I still feel like there's some missing pieces that I still quite haven't got yet. I know where I'm going, and I feel like I'm going to get there, but I don't associate with my sickness. I'm completely aware I'm going to get well. I actually feel like I'm getting well, but what they've done is they've done certain things to me which have really diminished my quality of life. Like they cut my eye open and they put 4 aluminium tantalum markers in my eyeball socket, and then they irradiated my eyeball and blinded me in one eye. So that emotionally, that really, really hit me hard, because I could go from seeing perfectly fine to now only having one side of my face with vision. And that I think that has damaged me probably more than anything, because emotionally I was so depressed because I couldn't get my balance or anything. You know, I even crashed my car initially because I wasn't used to seeing out of one eye, and as I turned into my drive, I took the front end of me, and it was like that bad. Now my eyesight is slowly coming back, but I've been trying to get. I've been on all sorts of herbs, so I've absolutely killed the herbs. Initially, I've spent thousands on herbs, and also one of the herbs I thought that might really help me because I've got problems with my brain would have been the upper circumbrain nerve, but I also know that I'm not supposed to take that if I've got any tumours up in that location, and I know I have. So although they are going,
Darren, let me interrupt you a little. I have a feeling that you need a session with Ivanna, just a private session.
Yeah, I understand.
What do you think? What do you think?
Well, I'm open to anything really, to be honest with you. I mean, I've gone.
It's going to be very helpful for you, because
yeah,
you might not exhaust the whole thing here in this meeting, but I'm sure Ivanna is a coach. She will be able to lead you step by step, and if you contact her, and then maybe we can create for you Zoom that you just have a meeting, a full meeting, and even coaching weekly, whatever time that you are going to agree with her. And how about, I don't know, Ivanna, what do you think?
Sure. I mean, obviously it's up to Darren, but the last thing I want to say, and this is just my perception, and as I was listening to you, this is what I'm hearing. There's a lot of focus on what's happened and how bad it was and how much you suffered. And you continue to sort of recycle that in your mind, and you continue to tell yourself that it was so difficult. I can't believe it was so difficult. I can't believe this happened to me. You have to be able to let go of what has happened. The past is not real. It was real in that moment. But if you continue to live today as if that stuff was still happening and still affecting you, then it will continue to affect you. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely do see what you mean, yeah.
So you have to find a way to almost forget what happened. You have to change it. You have to reframe it in your mind. You know who Anita Morjani is?
No.
All right. You can Google her. An amazing lady who had a near-death experience. She, in practical terms, she died from cancer. She was so riddled with cancer that she was on her deathbed and she effectively died, and she went to the other side and she had some really strong realizations, and she came back and all of her cancer had dissolved. And one thing that she says is that I really like is when she says that, look, if I can come back from that disease, there is very little a human being cannot come back. If they have enough motivation, if they have a purpose, you have to shift your purpose from being about your disease, your illness, to something else that's constructive. Shift your purpose to something joyful that is about living and serving and doing for others, rather than being so focused on trying to get well. And you will be amazed at the shifts that happen within your body. All right, so I'm going to leave that there, and I think we should move on because there are other people.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your help.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, I think the best thing is to connect again with Darren and Ivana. I think that's the best thing we can do after this meeting. Then there are some things, there are some, I think there are documents or what, if they are available, you share with us in the group. There are so many people you have quoted, people, doctors, some writings, I don't know.
Well, Anita Morjani, she has an Instagram page. She had written a book about her near-death experience. And that's Anita, A-N-I-T-A, Morjani, M-O-O-R-J-A-N-I.
Okay.
An unbelievable story. I mean, this woman came back literally from dead and came back to life and is living a very happy, healthy, productive life.
Okay.
So nothing is final, nothing is terminal. It all depends on whether or not you have something to live for. I don't know what other people I have mentioned. I mean, I talk about
there's a question here. There's a question here about, let me read it fully. About herbal tinctures. Did I call it right? Tinctures,
yes,
or what?
tinctures, yeah.
For me, please. What is the most potent alcohol strength? But alcohol strength for tinctures, 40% or 25%. Also, are the best tinctures thicker in texture rather than watery? That's the question.
All right. So first, the higher the alcohol content, the stronger the tincture, because the alcohol pulls out the goodies from the herb. But the more important number to pay attention to is not the alcohol content, but the ratio of herbs. And you will see this on the bottle where it says, usually most often it will say 1:3 or 1:4, 1:5. And sometimes you will find the ones that are 1:2. And the lower that second number, the more potent the tincture. So a tincture that has the ratio of 1:3 is much stronger than the tincture that has the ratio of 1:5. So that's that. Now, in terms of thickness, it depends, because some tinctures are made just with alcohol, which will make them thinner. Other tinctures are made exclusively with glycerin. Those are weaker than alcohol-based tinctures, and they are thicker in their texture or viscosity. And some tinctures combine both. Some tinctures are both glycerin-based and they have alcohol in them. So the viscosity of the tincture can depend on whether or not it's a purely alcohol-based tincture, whether it's a purely glycerin-based tincture, or if it's a mixed type of tincture. Now, I have taken Dr. Morse's alcohol-based tinctures, and even with them, you see sort of a bit of variation in viscosities. So it depends on the batch, but it also depends whether the tincture in the bottle that you got, came more from the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, than more surface. And in a purely alcohol tincture, then you can see that it sometimes can be thicker, where there's more of that plant material that has been settled, like sediment in a way. And that type of tincture will be stronger than if it's collected more from the top of the barrel and closer to the surface. So yes, there is a variation with that. I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you. If there's anybody else has a question, please, we want to wrap it up. Time. We're almost 3 hours.
Okay, I have one last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask? Okay, Firstly, I want to thank you for this session. It's really helpful for all of us.
You're welcome.
Okay, I want to ask how to ensure that I'm getting all the nutrition that my body needs. Of course, on a fruitarian diet, how can I make sure?
The only thing you have to worry about is your digestion, absorption, and utilization, because fruitarian diet has everything your body needs to sustain it in terms of nutrition and energy. It has the minerals, it has the vitamins, it has the fatty acids, and it has the amino acids. The only time you're going to be lacking in nutrition is if you have an issue with digesting, absorbing, or utilizing the nutrition that you are taking in.
Okay. Also, what about if I dose on one fruit or like a couple kinds only of fruits? Like, I'm not sure if you have heard about the 30 bananas diet, and is it
I
bad?
would not do that. That's insane to me.
Okay, for example, people who live in areas where they don't have accessibility to many kinds of fruits.
Well, bananas are not going to detox you. They're too starchy, they slow down detox. They're very good for nutrition. So if you're worried about nutrition and having enough nutrients in your body, go wild on bananas. The fruits that are detoxifying fruits are the juicy subacid and acid fruits. If you cannot have access to those types of fruits, then you should be doing a lot of fasting. And here's another way we know that this idea of nutrition deficiencies is a complete fallacy. When I am on all fruit and I start to go deeper and I stay just to fruit, my teeth start to lose enamel. I get sensitivity. They thin out a great deal. But if I go on a hard dry fast for 9, 10, 11, 12 days where I consume absolutely nothing, I come out of it with my nails and my enamel rebuilt. So what this tells you is that you don't actually need to worry about having enough nutrition. Your body can rebuild itself out of absolutely nothing, literally. If you are rebuilding teeth on a dry fast when you are eating nothing for 10 days or 12 days, what does that tell you? That this idea that we're so deficient is complete garbage. The reason it's such a big concern is because the majority of human population eats such denatured and dead food that we get nothing, no nutrition out of it. And that's why people eat so much of it. It's not because you need to have 1,200 calories or 2,000 calories in a day. It's because you need to eat so much food to get just a minuscule amount of some kind of nutrition. And if you think about it, if you're eating cooked food, if you're eating dead food, you're getting zero nutrition, and yet you're walking around. So why would going on a raw diet and on fruit all of a sudden make you deficient of anything? That just makes no sense. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yes, I think it makes sense.
It's like people will come to me and I put them on a juice feast and they go, oh my God, is this going to make me deficient? And I say to them, think, use your head. When you are eating fruits and vegetables, you can only eat, let's say, maybe 2, 3 apples tops at a time. But when you're juicing and you're making 24 ounces of juice or 32 ounces, you're juicing at least 7 apples. So when you're juicing, you're actually getting more nutrition in a much more concentrated form. You're not getting less. Not only that, because it's juiced and you removed the fiber and cellulose, it's very easy to digest and absorb, as opposed to if you were eating it, where you need to have pancreatic enzymes, and then you need to have a good permeability of your small intestine. When you're doing juices, you can digest and absorb your juices just through the mouth because you have enzymes in your saliva. So this is a completely backwards way of thinking that people don't understand.
Right.
How this
And in your opinion, what's the maximum amount of foods can a person eat in a day, or maximum calories?
There's not, first of all, forget the word calorie. It's absolutely useless. It's absolutely worthless. A calorie measures how much energy is needed to heat up a kilogram of water, which has absolutely nothing to do with vitality. So who gives a shit about calories? Like I said, you can go on a dry fast and abstain completely of all food and water and rebuild your body. It's absolutely irrelevant. I do not think in terms of calories. I do not care how many calories there are. You must eat in an intuitive way, in a sense that you don't need to eat massive amounts of fruit because you think that you need to in order to keep up with your caloric needs. That's not necessary, because digestion takes energy. So the more you eat, the less energy by default you're going to have, because all of your blood supply is now going to be concentrated in your gut. So you should be eating light, actually. And you should stop eating when you're having a meal before you feel full. There's no need to overwhelm your system with large quantities of food. It does not provide any added benefit. As I said, you're just making manure. You're in the business of making poop. Your body can only absorb so much at a time, and it discards the rest.
Right.
You got to get out of this, get out of this thinking, medical thinking of calories. We live off of energy, electricity. A cell vibrates at a certain frequency. And in order to keep that cell alive and well, you have to match the frequency of that cell with the types of food you eat. And the most electrical type of food is fruit. Now, if your cell, let's say your cell needs to be vibrating at the frequency, let's say 25, okay? That means that the food you come in has to be of at least equal frequency to keep that cell at that level. But let's say now you have a cell that maybe is weak or mutated. So now that cell is actually vibrating at a frequency, let's say, of 15. It's no longer enough for you to bring in food with the frequency of 25, because that will still leave you at a deficit of 10. You understand? So you actually have to exceed that frequency. Vegetables don't have as much electricity. And by the way, this is something that has been proven in studies where they have hooked people up to electric stimulators. And what they found is that electricity enabled the body to heal wounds faster, and specifically to regrow new blood vessels. So it is electricity that keeps us healthy. It's not about calories. It's not about vitamins. It's about energy. It's about information that is in food. And different types of fruits and vegetables carry different vibrational information. I mean, if you look at grapes and you look, I don't know, you look at honeydew. If you eat honeydew, you're not going to get results anywhere close to the detox that you're going to achieve and the healing you will achieve with grapes. But if you compared their nutritional content, they're going to have most of the same vitamins. Vitamin C, be this, be that. You understand? So there's really not that much difference in terms of chemicals that they contain. And yet they have a different impact on the system. Why? Because their frequency is different. The information that is encoded in that electromagnetic frequency is different. And so when you consume it, it will impact you differently. So get out of the thinking of nutrients, minerals, calcium, calories. It's all irrelevant. It's about energy. You feed your body vitality, you feed your body energy, you're going to energize it, you're going to heal it. They even do now, they have this technology where, forget about food, they created a gizmo. And I'm sorry I don't have more information that I can think of right now. It's left my mind, where they actually use a device to artificially increase the vibrational frequency of the cells. And they have seen tremendous improvements with this. Just by manipulating electrically the magnetic frequency of the cells. No food or diet was involved. So there's absolutely no need to worry about that. As long as you continue to eat raw fruits and vegetables, some of them, and vegetables are the builders. Those are the ones that are going to help you build muscle and, you know, your bones, tissues, and stuff like that. You're going to be fine.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think we need to wrap it up because of time. And Ivanna, maybe talk about yourself on how people can get help from you. You are a health coach or what? Tell them everything, then we wrap it up.
Yes, I am a health coach, among other things. I am an energy healer. I am a channel. I do emotional release work. I do emotional healing work with people. It just so worked out that through my experience, I have developed and learned different techniques that address all aspects of the human being. So I help people get unstuck. I help them by giving them direction, how to get their health going. I do iridology, I do iris analysis. I design protocols and diets for people based on their specific needs. I help people with fasting, and I help people with doing emotional release when people struggle with cravings, when people have unresolved trauma. So that's sort of, I think that covers it.
Oh, thank you. So I hope I've not closed for anybody, because we have to end, please. 3 hours, 6 minutes. So, or I'm the one who's calculating the other way. It's 3 hours. We have been here 3 hours. Somebody has written something, I think it's a comment, Maya. It is with the science from quantum biofeedback. I don't know. She's just reacting about something. So I want to tell everybody, thank you for attending this. We are going to have it in the YouTube channel. And thank you so much, Ivanna. Thank you so much. This has been very, very, very informative, interactive. Actually, I had to even make it a little shorter for others, because like Darren wanted to speak. I hope, Darren, you are going to have time with Ivanna. I'm going to make contact with her. And Darren, I need to know which group are you in? Are you in weekly fasting or dry fasting or both? Darren.
Sorry, it just took me a while to unmute. That's all. I'm in the. To be honest with you, a friend of mine actually sent me a link to the group that's got this link on it. So I'm not entirely sure which one I am in, if I'm honest. What is the two?
So
Well, I'm in
think
both, so
we need
you
to
can
connect
find
with them.
me in both.
How do I get involved in both of them?
Please let your friend direct you to the
one
group,
of them's-
any of the group.
One of them's called Dry Fast,
Yes, yes.
and that's the one I'm involved with.
Okay, so we are going to find your contact there. Please just make sure that you write some write about yourself a little, or just say you are in this meeting. Then I connect with Ivanna. You need a lot of time with Ivanna.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
I understand.
And also sometimes attend Dr. Finalov's meetings. Sometimes we have them weekends. So sometimes you can ask your questions about these issues that you have. But I want you to connect with Ivanna because it's going to take a period of time. She'll tell you how she does it. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems that Ivanna has done a lot more work than me on emotional and obviously energy and things like that. So I'm lacking in them areas for sure.
Okay.
And even dry fasting and quite a few areas really.
Okay. So thank you, everybody. I think we have to just end
Thanks
our
very
meeting.
much, guys.